There is a moment he will never be able to explain with logic. A woman enters the room and nothing obvious happens. No music plays, no light follows her. And yet, something within him quietly straightens, as if someone had called an old, long-forgotten name. He tells himself it's mere attraction. She's beautiful, interesting, or simply different from the women he usually notices. He blames it on the smile at the corners of her mouth or the way her eyes seem in no hurry to prove anything to anyone. Yet in the background of his consciousness, a gentler truth whispers, I know her from a place I've never been. He has seen thousands of faces, swiped, glanced, flirted, passed by. He knows what it means to desire a body, a story, a distraction. But this is different. It feels as if he's standing before a mirror that shows him a version of his soul he was never allowed to see. When she laughs, something in his chest loosens, as if someone has opened a locked room from within. When she looks at him, all his usual masks fall away. The charming tone, the practiced distance, the little games that once protected him suddenly feel thin and childish.
He doesn't know why he wants to be honest with her, only that he does. Around her, he feels a strange sense of remembrance, as if they had once argued and reconciled in another life, as if, at some invisible point in the future, they had sat together at a kitchen table, talking about nothing and everything while the day faded outside. It's not dramatic, but a quiet familiarity that unsettles him. Carl Jung once said that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is a reaction, both are transformed. He doesn't know this quote, but he feels its truth in his bones because something in him reacts to her in a way that promises change. He notices how the world sharpens when she's near. The light on the wall, the way time stretches and compresses around small moments, the silence between her words. He becomes painfully aware of himself, not from insecurity, but because his soul rises closer to the surface. Outwardly, nothing remarkable happens. Two people stand in a room talking about work, friends, or trivial things. But inwardly, his entire life rearranges itself to make room for her presence. He doesn't understand that this is recognition. He only knows it feels wrong to walk away from her, like leaving a book open on its most beautiful page. His body retains a quiet longing for her voice, for the curve of her thoughts, as if an inner magnet had finally found the direction it was always meant to turn toward. Later he'll try to tell himself he's exaggerating, that it's foolish to feel so much so soon. But a deeper part of him already knows. He isn't merely attracted, he remembers something his soul has long known, before his mind could catch up. Before he met her, he already carried a woman within him. Not a real woman with a face and a name, but a feeling of femininity, a quiet inner image that appeared in dreams, daydreams, and those strange moments when music made his chest ache for no reason. As a boy, he felt her as a gentleness living beneath his toughness, the urge to comfort rather than conquer, the instinct to protect small things, the need to hear the silence in a room before speaking into it. He learned early that the world didn't know what to do with that part of him, so he built himself armor. He learned jokes, dares, and how to hide his tenderness behind sharp timing. He chose logic over intuition. He listened more to the expectations of other men than to the quiet voice in his chest. But the inner woman in him never disappeared. She merely stepped back into the shadows and waited. Sometimes she reached him through the women he dated, through his attraction to sensitivity, creativity, or mystery, through his fascination with eyes that seemed to look past his facade. He thought he was simply following a type. In truth, his soul was searching for a mirror. He tried to turn every woman into that inner image. He projected his fantasies of softness, safety, and emotional warmth onto their faces. And when they didn't match this invisible script, he felt confused and disappointed without knowing why. He wasn't truly angry at them, but at the distance between his inner world and reality. Jung described this inner woman as a bridge. She is the part of a man that connects him to his feelings, his intuition, and depths that logic alone can never reach. When he honors her, he becomes more complete. When he ignores her, she turns into moodiness, resentment, or obsession whose source he can't understand. For years he crossed this bridge in dreams, but rarely in waking life. Often he would wake from a vivid dream of a woman whose face he couldn't quite remember, tears in his eyes and an inexplicable longing in his chest. By breakfast he had pushed it away and thought it meant nothing. Yet the inner woman kept arranging small encounters, a film that tore him open, a song that silenced him, a stranger on a train whose mere presence moved him. Each of these scenes was a quiet rehearsal for the day his soul would see its reflection in full daylight. When he meets you, the invisible and the visible finally collide. The feeling he's carried since childhood stands before him. In shoes, skin, and eyes that hold both storm and sunlight. The bridge that once existed only in his unconscious now has a living form. He has no words for it. He only knows that you speak a language his heart has been fluent in for years, though his mouth never learned it. You remind him of every dream he ever had of being more honest, tender, awake. That's why his reaction to you feels larger than the moment itself. Your presence touches that place where his inner femininity has waited to be seen and honored. In you, he doesn't just see a woman. He meets his own soul at the edge of the water and realizes that the reflection looking back at him is also himself. At first, you may not even notice how the air changes when his attention turns to you. You take him for another man who listens. A polite smile, a nod at the right time. Yet when you speak, you sense something different. You feel his presence lean toward you, as if your words were not sounds but pieces of a map he's long been searching for. He remembers things you yourself have long forgotten. How you drink your coffee when you're tired, unlike those moments when you are full of hope. The story you once told about the book that comforted you as a lonely child. Weeks later, he mentions it softly, and you're surprised that someone listened closely enough to remember. When you speak, he doesn't scroll through his phone. His eyes don't wander to the door. His gaze stays on you, not demanding, not possessive, but calm, alert, deeply attentive. He listens even to your casual jokes with a softness that lingers after the laughter fades. He doesn't just laugh at the joke. He remembers the way your lips curve around mischief, the quick flicker of light in your eyes. He gathers these details like someone who has finally found a language he wants to speak fluently. His questions are different too. He doesn't just ask what you do, but what it does to your soul. He wants to know what keeps you awake at night and what kind of silence you need to feel safe. When you answer, he listens with his whole body, as if the room has shrunk to the distance between your voice and his heartbeat. You notice that he often becomes quiet when you're near. Not the silence of boredom, but the deep stillness of someone who doesn't want to miss anything. He leaves spaces between words and doesn't rush to fill them. In those spaces, you both sense something invisible, a thread weaving between your inner worlds. Over time, you realize he perceives your inner weather. He feels when your smile is real and when it's just a curtain before a tired soul. He notices when your messages sound flatter and reaches out, without blame, without demand, as if an inner barometer within him had tuned itself precisely to you. This kind of attention feels like standing in warm sunlight after years in a cold room. Part of you relaxes, wants to breathe, to unfold, to be fully seen. Another part panics. You're not used to being looked at so attentively without someone trying to change or control you. He's not perfect. He forgets things. He sometimes gets lost in his own storms. Yet, in his presence, there is something like refuge. When he is truly there, you feel that your thoughts are not a disturbance, but a river along whose banks he sits gratefully. In truth, he doesn't just listen to you. He listens to the echo of his own soul through your voice. Carl Jung said that we never truly meet as strangers, but always parts of ourselves, reflected in the eyes of another. When he recognizes you, something in him understands that your words are messages from his own soul. That's why his attention feels sacred. It's not flattery, not a strategy. It's the instinct of a man who senses that by truly seeing you, he is returning to a long-abandoned room in his own heart. So he observes, he remembers, at night he returns in thought to your sentences, not out of obsession, but because through you he learns to honor himself. All his life he has trusted his defenses more than his feelings, charm, sarcasm, the ability to change the subject when it hurt too much. Those defenses were his loyal soldiers at the gate of his heart. Then he meets you, and those guards begin to look at each other uncertainly, as if unsure whether they should step aside. He hears himself saying things he never intended to share, about the father he still wants to impress in his mind, about the breakup that hurt him much deeper than he admitted. At first, the words come haltingly, then more freely, as if they had been waiting for this evening, for this listener. Afterward, he feels exposed. He replays the conversation in his head, ashamed. Why did I say that? Why did I let her see that? The next morning, a small panic sits under his ribs, as if he had left the house without armor. He tries to rebuild the walls, writes less, makes jokes to keep everything on the surface, tells himself he needs to slow down to regain control. But as he withdraws, he feels a pull in his chest that won't go away. Because near you, distance feels like a lie. His body remembers what it was like to speak freely, the relief in his shoulders, the light behind his eyes. He realizes that his laughter with you comes from a deeper source, not the social laughter he uses in rooms where he trusts no one. You ask simple questions, yet they reach complicated places in him. How are you really? How did that feel back then? Your curiosity isn't intrusive, but it's gentle and steady, and it makes it hard for him to hide behind half answers. Sometimes his voice trembles when he answers. Sometimes he can't answer at all and just looks away because the truth is too raw. You may think you said something wrong. You didn't. You're just standing at the edge of a door he's never let anyone open. Jung wrote that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. He doesn't know that quote, but he lives it. By caring for you, he feels his own darkness awaken, asking to be seen. It frightens him and frees him at the same time. He might say he's bad at opening up, that he's complicated and that feelings confuse him. In truth, he means that you disarmed him so quickly his old strategies no longer work. He stands unprotected before a mirror that shows him the boy he once was and the man he still wants to become. When he withdraws, it doesn't always mean he doesn't want you. Often it means he wants you too much, that your gaze touches places he has long avoided. In you, his soul sees a chance for truth. In you, it steps out from behind the curtain and quietly asks, "Can we be honest now?" His defenses tremble, not because you attacked them, but because they sense they're no longer needed near you. He tastes a new kind of safety, one based not on control, but on being seen. And once you've known that, it's hard to go back to pretending. Between you grows a peculiar intensity. In one moment, he is fully present. His eyes, his voice, his body, warm and open as if nothing else exists. The next, he seems far away, searching for words that used to come easily. It's as if he's standing in a doorway, uncertain whether to step inside or flee. When you let him be seen, something in him begins to glow. He feels more alive, more creative, more courageous. He speaks of ideas long buried and admits he wanted more from life than the safe path he chose. In your presence, his courage stretches like an animal awakening after a long winter. But the light that awakens his dreams also illuminates his fears. The closer he gets to you, the louder the old voices grow. You will lose her. You're not enough. You'll ruin everything again. The whispers come from wounds he was never really allowed to feel. That's why he swings between closeness and withdrawal. He may suddenly cancel, then sincerely apologize. He becomes quiet when things are beautiful and honest. That doesn't mean your connection is shallow. It means it touches the places where love and fear live side by side. He can no longer show only his shiny side. His jealousy, which he thought he had long conquered, resurfaces. His reflex to shut down when he's hurt returns. His need to control what he doesn't understand flickers at the edge of his kindness. You see both, the man he's proud of and the boy who still hurts. It's tempting to take his confusion personally, to believe you've done something wrong. But most of the time, you're witnessing the collision between his desire to grow and his loyalty to old survival patterns. You've awakened his inner light, and with it, the shadow that has been quietly waiting to be recognized. Jung taught that the shadow contains not only the darkness, but also the unlived, the possible within us. When a man meets his shadow outside himself, he is confronted with everything he could be, and everything he still fears. You become a mirror, not only for his beauty, but also for his repressed responsibility, his hidden pain, his unused tenderness. That's why he sometimes says, you overwhelm him even when you're gentle. Your mere existence presses against the edges of his comfort zone. You don't demand that he be more. He simply feels it. In your presence, more seems possible. And this realization is, for a heart accustomed to its limitations, both intoxicating and frightening. If you look closely, you'll see his inner chaos isn't a meaningless storm. It's the wind loosening old leaves because a new season is beginning. In you, he recognizes an invitation from life to step into his full magnitude, and his shadow knows nothing will ever be the same again. One day he'll realize wanting you is no longer enough. The desire to impress you begins to feel small compared to the deep wish to stand beside you as an equal. His feelings transform. From the thrill of conquest into the quiet longing to become a person who can truly walk your path with you. He begins to notice the parts of his life that no longer fit the man he wants to be in your presence. The way he avoids difficult conversations, the habits with which he hides from himself, the corners of his life where he has lived half asleep. Now these things feel uncomfortable because he senses that you would see through them immediately, without saying a word. So he begins to change quietly. He writes the message he's long avoided. He takes responsibility for how he ended something in his past. Instead of blaming others, he starts telling the truth more often, even where a lie would be easier. You see him reevaluating his friendships and routines. Evenings once filled with distraction and numbness now feel empty. He seeks places where he can feel his heart, rather than those where he can hide in the noise. It's as if your presence has turned up the volume of his conscience. He no longer only asks, "What do I want from her?" A more important question arises, "Who do I become in her presence?" Closeness to you is a mirror constantly inviting him to grow into his own sincerity. You notice that he's not obsessed with where you are, not because he doesn't care, but because a deeper reverence for your inner world has taken root in him. He wants your yes to be free, so that if you choose him, he can trust the authenticity of that choice. In the way he holds your connection, there is softness. He doesn't push your heart. He doesn't punish you when you need time. Instinctively, he understands that anything he tries to force could destroy exactly what makes your bond sacred. That doesn't mean he's passive. When it matters, he steps forward. He tells you what he feels, with an honesty that surprises even him. He may stumble over the words, but you feel they come from a place that has long practiced truth in the dark. He begins to care not only about how you see him, but also about how he sees himself when he's with you. When he acts out of fear, he feels it more sharply. When he chooses kindness over ego, he sleeps more peacefully. Your existence becomes a quiet compass, constantly leading him back to his own soul. And if you look closely, you'll see he doesn't want to possess your light. He lets himself be taught by it. The love he feels for you calls him into a much greater version of himself, and he follows it slowly, not perfectly, not without resistance, but with a sincerity that always returns, even when his doubts want to pull him away. She, on the other hand, has no idea how deeply she is seen. In her mind, she's just herself, with all the ordinary doubts and small insecurities she carries like pebbles in her pockets. She sees in the mirror only tired skin, fine lines around her eyes, unruly hair. She doesn't see how his soul exhales when she enters the room. She tells herself that men are often fascinated for a while and then move on. That interest fades when she isn't always easy or available. When he looks at her with his calm, steady gaze, she assumes he'll eventually get bored. She doesn't understand that it's not her perfection that keeps him, but the unique shape of her spirit. There are nights when she lies awake and replays her mistakes like a cruel film. The times she loved too much, stayed too long, stayed silent when she should have set a boundary. She believes these are reasons someone might leave her, but he sees in them the tender story that shaped her into the woman now standing before him. Maybe you recognize yourself in her, in the way she downplays her gentleness, the kind that makes strangers feel safe, in the way she distrusts her intuition because it doesn't fit the clear logic the world worships. She doesn't realize that it is precisely this intuition that calls his inner world out of hiding. Jung often suggested that we don't simply fall in love with people, but with an image of the soul that speaks to what we ourselves long to become. He isn't blinded by her, but awakened through her, because something in the way she feels and knows answers a question he had carried in the dark for a long time. And yet she wonders if she is enough. She fears that the magic will fade once he truly knows her. She thinks she must be wiser, calmer, more confident to deserve the way he looks at her. In truth, it is her honest becoming that moves him, not a perfected version of herself. He notices how she cares about small things others overlook, how she pauses before speaking when she senses someone's fragility, how her laughter returns after a hard day, like a quiet act of resistance against despair. To him, these are not trivial details, but sacred proofs of the light she keeps within her. She is used to carrying her heart alone. When he recalls her stories and mirrors her strength, she wants to dismiss it. "You're exaggerating," she says. But he isn't. He only describes what his inner world recognized in her from the very first moment. What she doesn't yet understand, she is not just a woman he desires, she is a symbol in his soul, a living answer to his hidden longing for depth, truth, and tenderness. He cannot quite explain why her presence changes him. He only knows that near her he feels more honest, more awake, and somehow more himself. Maybe as you read this you thought of someone, a man whose gaze held you in that strangely familiar way, a connection that felt too deep for the short time you knew each other. Or maybe you felt the ache of never having experienced something like that. Either way, this story wanted to tell you something. You are not just someone who can be chosen or overlooked. You are also the one who perceives. Your soul reads the world constantly, even when your mind calls it imagination. Think of the moments when you felt that mysterious pull towards someone, the times when your body relaxed before your brain gave permission, the friendships that began with a simple conversation and left you with a feeling of being recognized. These are not coincidences, they are messages from the deeper layers of your life. Jung spoke of the inner feminine and inner masculine as energies that live within every person. The anima and the animus dwell in you too. They maintain a secret relationship behind your thoughts and decisions. When you feel drawn to someone, it's often these inner figures seeking acknowledgement. They reach out for mirrors in which they can grow. When a man looks at you with that ancient gentleness in his eyes, something in you awakens too. You are not only seen, you see, you feel your own inner masculine step forward, curious about the reflection that life is showing you. You meet yourself in his reaction. That means, whether he stays or leaves, you are already in contact with something sacred. The recognition was never just romance. It was your soul showing you its own depth through the way your heart responded. No one can take that from you. You have walked through so many spaces where you felt too much or not enough, places where your sensitivity was seen as weakness and your intuition as exaggeration. Yet it is precisely these traits that make you visible to the kind of love that can truly see. Not everyone is meant to recognize you, but those who can will feel it in their bones. As you move forward, let this knowledge change the way you carry yourself. You don't need to chase attention that doesn't truly reach you. You don't need to shrink your truth so others can be comfortable. You may wait for connections that speak the language of your soul. Pay attention to who you become in the presence of those who matter to you. Notice when your voice sounds freer, your body feels safer, your laughter rises from the depth of your heart instead of from the mask you've learned to wear. These are signs that something real is recognizing you. If something in this story touched the part of you that's tired of almost love, then rest for a moment in this truth. Let it soften the way you judge your past and the way you fear your future. You are not too late. You are unfolding at the pace your soul can bear. And if these words moved you, share them with the woman who still doubts her own light. Keep them for nights when you forget what you deserve. Stay close to places that remind you of the depth you carry within. If your heart longs for more stories like this, then follow that longing, not out of impulse, but as a quiet promise to keep listening.